I was born and raised in the quaint town of Harrow, a place so small that everyone knows your name and no secret stays hidden for long. After high school, I left for college, and soon after graduating, I dove headfirst into the retail industry. My passion wasn't just in sales, it was specifically in lingerie. Fueled by this drive, I worked tirelessly, eventually becoming the owner of a chain of lingerie boutiques that ranged from cozy local shops to upscale destinations. Despite my professional success, something always felt missing. That's when Henry came into my life. It all started with a simple friend request. His profile picture showed a man in a sharp suit with an even sharper gaze. Intrigued, I accepted, and soon discovered he was a lawyer, a detail that perfectly matched his polished appearance. Our first exchange was unassuming, but his humor and wit quickly drew me in. Late-night conversations with him became my solace after long, grueling days. We talked about everything, from silly topics like cheesy pickup lines to deeper, meaningful reflections. His messages brightened my evenings, and eventually, he suggested we meet in person. Our first meeting was at my favorite local cafe, renowned for its rich coffee. Henry was even more impressive in person. His charm and attentiveness far exceeded his online persona. We talked for hours, and by the time we parted ways, I couldn't deny the connection we shared. Over the next year, we grew closer, our relationship blossoming into something extraordinary. One chilly evening, as I was locking up one of my stores, Henry surprised me. His breath hung visibly in the cold air as he nervously held out a small, elegant box. With an earnest gaze, he began to speak. "Isa," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "we've been thriving together, just you and me. Recently, I realized it's time we made this official. I want you by my side forever. Will you marry me?" My heart raced, overwhelmed with emotion. Marriage was a big step, but as I looked into his sincere eyes, everything seemed to align. "Yes," I whispered, my voice shaky but filled with joy. "Yes, I'll marry you." But just as I began to revel in the moment, Henry's tone shifted. "There's something else we need to discuss," he said hesitantly. The word prenup fell like a cold shower over the warmth of the proposal. I blinked, taken aback. "Really, Henry? Is that necessary?" He quickly took my hands, his touch steadying me. "Isa, it's not about trust, it's about practicality. I've seen too many messy situations in my career. This is just protection, for both of us." He pulled out some documents. "It's straightforward. If either of us strays, the cheater forfeits their assets to the other. It's fair." I stared at the papers, conflicted. The romantic proposal now felt intertwined with a stark reality, but as I looked back at Henry, his expression was earnest. "All right," I finally said, "I'll consider it. But just so we're clear, Henry, I don't plan on ever giving you a reason to use this against me. That's all I'm asking," he said, visibly relieved. We celebrated that evening at a cozy restaurant, the warmth of the night momentarily making me forget the complexities of our conversation. Under the stars later, Henry pulled me close. "You know I love you, right? No document can change that." "I know," I replied, resting my head against his chest. "Just promise it won't come between us." "I promise," he said softly. A few days later, after consulting my own lawyer, I signed the prenup. It felt odd to sign something focused on the potential end of a relationship that had barely begun, but love is a gamble, and I was all in. For a while, we were the couple everyone admired, sharing laughs and stolen moments at gatherings, but as the months passed, subtle cracks began to form. The warmth we once shared started to cool. One day, during a shopping trip, we visited a perfume store where I chatted casually with a sales associate about different fragrances. After we left the store, Henry's demeanor shifted. His jaw was tight as he turned to me. "Who was that?" he asked sharply. Confused, I replied, "The sales associate? I was just asking about the perfumes." "Why?" His eyes were intense. "You seemed really into him," he accused. I stopped in my tracks, stunned by his insinuation. "Are you serious right now?" "I was discussing perfumes." "Henry, what's gotten into you?" I asked, baffled by his outburst. He scoffed, shaking his head. "Forget it. Let's just go home," he muttered, brushing the moment aside. But that incident was just the beginning of something deeper. Over the following weeks, Henry's jealousy became more pronounced. He grew colder, sulking or throwing sarcastic remarks anytime I so much as interacted with another man. At home, he became distant, often engrossed in his laptop or phone while I ate dinner alone, the silence between us heavier than the air. Unable to bear the growing tension, I confronted him one evening in his study. Henry, we need to talk, I said, firmly closing his laptop to ensure he paid attention. He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Isa, you don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. And when I see you laughing and chatting with other men, it gets to me. It feels like you don't respect our relationship enough to keep your distance," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. The conversation quickly escalated, both of us airing out unspoken frustrations and resentments. The wounds of our relationship bled raw, yet no solutions were found. The situation worsened when friends approached me with unsettling news. Henry had been spreading rumors, accusing me of flirting with other men. "Henry," I confronted him angrily one night, "you've been talking about me behind my back, telling people I flirt with other guys? How could you?" "It's not like that," he stammered, trying to justify his actions. "I might have said something, but only because I see how they look at you. You're too friendly, Isa, and you have no right," I interrupted, furious. "You're supposed to support me, not tear me down with lies. How can you expect trust when you act like this?" The argument left both of us exhausted, the love we once shared now buried beneath layers of mistrust and bitterness. A few days later, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Henry's usually precise handwriting was rushed. "Isa, let's try to start over. Meet me at the Grand View Hotel, room 181, at 7:10 p.m. tonight. Let's put the past behind us and move forward. H." The gesture caught me off guard. Was this an olive branch? A chance to rebuild what we had lost? Despite my apprehension, hope stirred within me, fragile yet persistent. That entire day, my thoughts were consumed by the note and the possibility of a new beginning. By evening, hope fluttered in my chest like a delicate bird taking flight. But when I arrived at the hotel, Henry's demeanor shattered any expectations I had. He stood there, his face a mask of anger. "So the prodigal wife finally returns," he sneered, his voice thick with disdain. "Henry, something terrible happened tonight," I began, my voice trembling with urgency. "We need to talk." "Don't bother," he cut me off with a dramatic gesture, slamming a set of photographs onto the table. "Then explain these," he demanded furiously. Trembling, I picked up the photos. My blood ran cold. They showed me in a hotel room, entangled in a compromising position with a man I didn't recognize. My heart sank. "Henry, I swear," I stammered, horrified, "I don't know this man. I've never seen him before. Something bizarre happened tonight, I can't explain it." But Henry's fury was relentless, his trust in me crumbling before my eyes. I stammered, panic rising in my chest. Henry's scornful laugh sent a chill down my spine. "A monstrous mistake or just your monstrous actions? Marrying you was the real error," he declared coldly. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I steeled myself, determined to remain composed. "I didn't do this. Henry, you have to believe me," I pleaded desperately. He sneered, his tone venomous. "Believe you? Why should I? You're nothing but a liar and a cheater, and I'll make sure you don't get a dime from me. I'm taking this to court. I'll take everything." Grabbing his pre-packed suitcase, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the now empty house, leaving me devastated. I collapsed onto the sofa, my body racked with sobs. A sharp, throbbing pain consumed my head, clouding my thoughts. It wasn't just a headache, it was as if a dense fog had descended over my brain, making the events of the night disjointed and surreal. Then, it struck me, the wine. I had only had one glass, but the overwhelming dizziness and blackout were inexplicable. The symptoms were far too severe for such a small amount. Desperate for answers, I called my friend Riley, a nurse. "Riley, something's wrong," I blurted out, my voice shaky. I had one glass of wine, and everything went dark. I woke up hours later, and now Henry has these photos. None of it makes sense. Riley's tone was immediately serious. "Isa, it sounds like you might have been drugged. You need to go to a hospital or a lab and get tested immediately. Tell them everything, especially about the wine and your symptoms." Without hesitation, I drove to the lab, my mind racing to piece together fragments of the evening. I explained my ordeal to the technician, who solemnly drew several vials of blood for testing. Days later, a heavy letter from Henry landed on my doorstep. My hand shook as I opened it. The cold, formal language confirmed my worst fears. Henry was suing me for infidelity, aiming to strip me of everything based on our prenuptial agreement. The trial was set for a month away. Panicked, I called my lawyer, Jacob. His voice was a small comfort amid the turmoil. "Isa, come to my office. We need to strategize." When I arrived at his office, I spotted Henry outside, walking with a young man. My heart froze. The man looked eerily familiar. Then it hit me, he was the same individual from the incriminating photographs. Instinctively, I reached for my phone and began recording. I captured Henry and the young man exchanging an envelope, which the man quickly concealed. Adrenaline surged through me as I realized the potential importance of what I had just witnessed. In Jacob's office, I shared the video. His eyebrows shot up as he watched the secretive exchange. "This is significant, ISA. It looks highly suspicious. We need to involve an investigator," he said, dialing his contact immediately. Jacob's friend Wyatt, a seasoned investigator, agreed to take the case. He wasted no time trailing the young man and digging into his background. Within days, Wyatt summoned us to his office. His expression was grave. "I spoke to the young man," Wyatt began. "He's an actor, down on his luck. He admitted your husband hired him to pose in those photos. Henry orchestrated the entire setup, including drugging you." As he spoke, an email notification buzzed on my phone. My blood test results had arrived. With trembling hands, I opened the attachment. My heart skipped a beat as I read the results, positive for a potent sedative. The pieces of the puzzle finally came together. Henry's betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined, but now, I had the truth on my side. The courtroom was tense as I handed my phone to Jacob. He scanned the blood test results, his expression hardening with determination. "ISA," he said firmly, "this is the evidence we need. Not only can we defend you, but we can also confront Henry effectively. We'll keep everything confidential until the court date. Let's catch him off guard." A week passed, and I tried to distract myself by focusing on my lingerie store. One afternoon, Henry walked in, smugly introducing me to Nova, his new fiancée. He flaunted their engagement, but his smile was hollow. Nova, much younger and seemingly unaware of Henry's true nature, observed me with curiosity and skepticism. Henry's arrogance was palpable as he declared, "Soon, this store will be mine." I resisted the urge to respond, remembering Jacob's advice to stay silent until court. Instead, I gave a measured smile. "We'll see what the judge decides, Henry." The court date came quickly, and the atmosphere was electric with tension. Henry, representing himself, stood confidently to make his opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and commanding, "today, you will see the true character of the woman before you. ISA has not only violated her marriage vows but has undermined the sanctity of our household with her deceitful actions." He displayed photos of a supposed affair on a screen, stirring murmurs in the courtroom. Henry painted himself as a wronged husband, his words dripping with indignation and scorn. Each sentence was delivered with dramatic precision, aimed at swaying the judge. When his tirade ended, Jacob rose. His calm demeanor was a sharp contrast to Henry's theatrics. With measured authority, he began to dismantle the false narrative. "Your Honor," Jacob stated, "the claims against my client are not only baseless but part of a calculated scheme by Mr. Clark." Jacob gestured toward the back of the courtroom, and the actor Henry had hired entered. The room buzzed with shock as the young man nervously recounted his involvement, admitting he was paid to stage a scene for Henry's fabricated evidence. His trembling voice added weight to the revelation. Next, Jacob presented my blood test results. The courtroom fell silent as he explained how I had been unknowingly drugged. The judge's expression darkened as Jacob meticulously connected the dots, unveiling Henry's pattern of manipulation in previous marriages to financially exploit his ex-wives. As Jacob concluded, he requested not only the dismissal of Henry's fraudulent claims but also fair compensation for the ordeal I had endured. The judge deliberated before delivering her verdict. She ruled in my favor, voiding the prenuptial agreement and awarding me $60,010 in damages. Relief and vindication washed over me as tears welled in my eyes. Henry's face turned ashen. Nova, who had been silently observing, rushed out of the courtroom. She returned moments later to thank me for exposing the truth, then promptly left Henry for good. The trial's sensational details quickly made headlines. Henry's professional reputation was destroyed, and he lost his license to practice law. Encouraged by the revelations, his ex-wives filed lawsuits, exposing his long history of deceit. Financially and socially ruined, Henry was left with nothing. That evening, as I locked up my store and watched the sunset cast long shadows, I reflected on the journey. It had been a fight fraught with despair, but it was also a testament to resilience and the pursuit of justice. I had faced the storm and emerged stronger, with the truth as my shield.